And so I remember, matter of fact, it helped give me the inspiration to do, part of what gave me the inspiration to do the work. Because I remember, I think it was during the Obama campaign or whatever, I was working with a nonprofit and we were trying to get people registered to vote, right? And, you know, sometimes you have groups that basically, it's about numbers, you know, we need so many people registered to vote, so you gotta hit those quotas, and they'll tell you, listen, if somebody don't want it, just keep it moving. And I remember I would approach people about voting, and I would hear, man, I don't got time for that stuff, right? They didn't say stuff, they said the mother words, but trying to be respectful. I don't got time for that stuff, or man, my vote don't count, and all kinds of stuff, right? It don't matter who gets in office, and then, of course, you know, supervisor said keep it moving. But something hit me one day, and I'm like, I just couldn't, I had to just stop. And by the second question, what I discovered was people who were telling me that were people who either thought they couldn't vote, right? Because they had a felony conviction, right? Well, that was like the main folks, right? And it dawned on me that, you know, like when I was incarcerated and I was getting ready to be released, I was not sitting on my bunk, rubbing my hands together saying, man, I can't wait to get home so I can go vote. Right? No, that's not a priority for me. Priorities was, where am I gonna live, right? Priorities was, am I gonna get a job? You know, those are the things that took over my mind. And so I remember when I got out, somebody came up and they asked me to register to vote. And I remember when they did that, it was like they just took a knife and just stabbed me in the old wound and twisted it, reminded me that I am not good enough to be a part of society. Now let me tell you something, it's a basic human instinct to want to be part of something greater, want to be part of a group, want to be validated. Trust me, you know, some of y'all, if any of y'all ever played sports or did things with teams, and when you didn't get picked, that you really wanted to be a part of that team and you didn't get picked, and sometimes the reaction, they was sorry anyhow, I didn't want to be a part of that, right? And all that was a defense mechanism, right? Or a coping mechanism, because the reality was you didn't want to be a part of that, and the pain of getting rejected made you devalue the thing that you had really secretly wanted to be a part of. And so what it dawned on me was that the one time that people who've been impacted by the justice system feel the most isolated, right? It's not during Christmas, it's not during Valentine's Day, it's not during the birthday, it's always during election season. That's the one time when we tell a group of people that you are not good enough, you don't matter, your voice don't count, right? We don't want you to be a part of this. And so our mechanism have always been, we cover that up with bravado, oh, my vote don't count, don't matter who gets in office. The problem with that is that if you go back to the civil rights era, you know that when mom and dad went to go vote, they took their whole family to vote. That civic engagement was part of the discussion at the family dinner table, right? It was a family affair. But when you strip mom of the right to vote and you strip dad of the right to vote, then you kill a conversation about civic engagement in the family. And so when you go back to that returning citizen who's saying to mask his hurt of not being a part of society, is saying it don't matter. The problem with that is that person influences a whole bunch of other folks who can vote. And they're thinking, oh yeah, voting must not matter. Because the person who I looked up to is saying it don't matter. And we don't even realize that the only reason they're saying that is to mask the pain. And so many occasions I've seen so many people that had that narrative, and sometimes they would sneak to the side and tell me, well, I'm a felon or whatever, right? And when I would actually show them that either one, they never lost their right to vote, or if they did, they had it restored, I would see grown men break down and cry like a baby. And I realized that most of us, almost all of us want to do is be part of something bigger. That's all we want to do. Because that is, I don't know, it's just it's a natural thing. And so, me being able to go vote helped me, actually, even though I didn't know I was yearning for it like that. I really didn't, because you go about life. I haven't voted in over 30-some years, and I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. Or so I thought. But that was just my conscience burying that stuff in my subconscious, and I just never connected until that day I actually was engaged in the act and realized how much that did mean to me to be a part of the collective. I hope that answered your question. Yes, Miss Susan. Hold on, let me get you the mic to talk about my book.
For those who have not read Desmond's book yet, could you please tell the audience the rest of the story, by which I mean after you and the people who helped you passed the Fourth Amendment to change the Florida Constitution to allow former felons to vote. What the state legislature did and what you did for the rest of the battle.
Okay, great question. So, Ms. Susan, you just drew out two stories in me. One, the response to what you prompted, and the other one, as a matter of fact, could you remind me the second part, commitment versus contribution, all right? So let me go back. So when we passed Amendment 4, and Florida was at the time the hardest state to pass a constitutional amendment. You didn't need 50+1, right? You needed 60% of people who voted in an election to actually vote yes on the amendment for it to pass. And that is extremely difficult to do. But we were able to get almost 65% of the voters that said yes. And the beautiful thing about that was that we had over 1 million people that were Republicans that voted for it, right? That we, when we first started, we thought it was going to be a bloodbath, right? Because, natural assumption, if Florida, a state in which Bush won by, 500 votes, right? If they all of a sudden enfranchise 1.4 million people, maybe the color of Florida might change a little bit. That was an erroneous assumption, by the way, but that was an assumption. And so we was expecting a bloodbath, but what we got was that people from all walks of life and all political persuasions came together and said yes on Amendment 4. And that was our love won the day thing. Little did we, and it was we were just naive. I would say I was naive. Did not understand, because we did not have opposition when we should have had opposition. But it came in the form of the Florida legislature when they decided that they needed to create implementation language. And so basically what they did was they said, okay, yep, you just won the right to vote, but before you can get the right to vote, here's a little something that you have to do, right? Because in your language you said you have to complete your sentence, so we're going to tell you that completing your sentence means that you got to pay all legal financial obligations before it's deemed complete. Which meant that out of the 1.4 million people, over 775,000 of those individuals could not enjoy the benefit of Amendment 4 because they owed some type of financial obligation. What we did was we organized and we raised over $30 million from over 90,000 people throughout the country, and people like Miss Susan, right? That believe that nobody should have to choose between putting food on their table or being able to vote, right? And we were able to spend that money and get over 40,000 people to write the vote back, and we were able to use other techniques. But our response, you see, our response could not have been the typical response, because we knew, like, I knew this too, right? Like, when I got arrested, the police didn't ask me if I was Democrat or Republican. You know, when I was in front of the judge getting sentenced, he didn't ask me if I was Democrat or Republican. And what I discovered was that substance abuse, whether it's opioids, whether it's drugs or alcohol, right? They did not discriminate based on your political leanings, right? That everybody, I mean, cross all kinds of lines was impacted. And so, and that showed up in the election. That did. And so we wanted to make sure that when we responded that we didn't, I mean, we definitely didn't want to make it an African American issue, right? Our strategy, my strategy, was to make it an all American issue, right? Because if it's an African American issue, only some people might, you know, support it. You know, if it's a white issue, maybe some people might support it, but if you make it an all-American issue, you can get such a wider audience. And I've learned over the years that you want to create a big umbrella, so creating a bigger umbrella for more people to come under dictates your response. And so when the legislature came at us and tried to do the implementation of the language that required the payment of outstanding fines and fees, we came up with the motto: where other people see obstacles, we see opportunities. And we use their legislation as a way to organize even more returning citizens. And I remember that year, we had over 100,000 returning citizens get registered to vote. And, you ready for this? Over 175,000 of their family members who never voted before came right along with them to the polls and voted for the first time. And so, you know, it's tragic how, you know, and I tell them that, you know, the story is that our politicians seen that family, that homeless family, living on the streets for so many years in the rain, sleet, and snow, and they didn't even want to raise a finger. For 50 years, they didn't want to raise a finger. Then we, the people, right, in the second greatest act of our democracy, the first is voting, the second is the ballot initiative process, where we take back the power that's originally ours and have a citizens initiative. We, the people, came together and decided that we were going to build that family a home. As soon as we built the home, here comes the politician now trying to dictate how we furnish the home. And that's what we had in Florida, right? And that was the politicians. Now, I know that we have some political people in here, but I think they're more public service than politicians. And it's a difference there, right? When politicians are involved, this country becomes divided and people die, right? When public service are involved, we have an opportunity to come together and people have an opportunity to live. And so we were dealing with a lot of politicians in Florida. But our response to them was not, I think Michelle said something about when they go low, you go high. You know, my thing is when they come at you, you just respond with love. Just respond with love. And we're gonna love their voters and we're gonna advocate for their voters. And that's exactly what we did. Now, I wanna end with this. Because I think this is so important, because I look and I see a diverse group of people in this audience. And most of the times when I see that, I always like to tell this story, right? Because believe it or not, I know I did too. There was a time when I did not understand the difference between the contribution and commitment. I never really fully understood it until somebody explained it to me a certain way, and I want to explain it to you. Because it's very important in this work for you to understand the difference between the contribution and the commitment. Y'all with me? All right, so all you have to do is think about a ham and cheese omelet. That's it, a ham and cheese omelet. And the ingredients in the ham and cheese omelet, you have ham, you have cheese, you have egg, and then if you were economically challenged like I was growing up, a little milk to stretch your eggs. Anybody ever use milk to stretch your eggs? All right, so y'all feel my pain, okay. So, and it gets fluffy too, right? So, once again, the ham and cheese omelet have ham, egg, cheese, and milk. You guys with me? You guys with me? Okay. So the ham comes from the pig, right? The egg comes from the chicken, right? And the cheese and the milk come from, all right, y'all good. The cheese and the milk come from the cow. So, here it goes. The chicken made a contribution to the ham and cheese omelet. The cow made a contribution to the ham and cheese omelet. The pig made a commitment to the ham and cheese omelet. You guys get that? The chicken and the cow contributed. So the chicken go and they sit down and lay an egg and get up and go about their business. The cow stops long enough for you to pump and they go about their business, right? And we get the things that we need. But the pig, there's no coming back from that. There's no coming back for that. And I share that story because one of the things that has been said for so many years but have not really been in practice until recent is that it is those who are closest to the pain that are the ones that are often closest to the solution. And the challenge has been, how do we show up in a way, understanding who we are in that moment, right? How do we stay in our lane? How do we understand, are we the chicken in this? Are we the cow in this? Or are we the pig in this, right? If you can just get up and walk away, then understand your role is a contributor. And we have to find people who are committed, who can't walk away. You see, I couldn't, when we had all of the ACLUs and the NAACPs and all of the fancy initials and organizations with the pedigree that was advocating for felon disenfranchisement in Florida, but when it went backwards, they went on and did other things. I couldn't go anywhere else. Everybody else that could wake up the next morning and vote, I couldn't. I had to stay. They didn't. And so when things turned around, because they tried the Constitution Amendment many years before I did. But we see, when things turned around, that's when we realized that, wait a minute, the people that was leading it was not the people that were committed to it. So maybe it wasn't going to go as far as we would have liked it to. If it's going to get somewhere, it's going to be somebody whose life depends on it getting where it got to go. And so we have to understand that if we are the chicken or we are the cow, then we need to play, we can't play the role of the pig. We got to let the pig play the role of the pig. And the beautiful thing about it is that you need all those ingredients to have a beautiful and tasty ham and cheese omelet. So it doesn't diminish your importance. But you got to know the role. And you have to ask your question. Whatever the issue is that you're engaged in, am I the chicken, the cow, or the pig?
So much came out of that. The idea of love, how love is the only thing that can conquer. How coming together is what makes change. I know for 25 years I've been blessed to be part of an organization that practices that, preaches that, believes that, leads that, does it every day. The idea that who I was in 1991 when I touched down in this town, nobody would ever thought like Desmond, I would be standing here today. And I know there's a bunch of us in this room, we have lived that life, and here we are now, and nobody ever thought that's who we used to be, unless we tell them, right? Problem is, there's a lot of us that still are in that position, that have that capacity to change, and we don't look at them like they do. We don't take time with them, we don't love them, we don't reach down and pull them up. We just assume it's a lost cause. We just assume they don't get it, they don't want it. They're them, they're this. The media has told us what they are and who they are. But there's so many of us in this room that had the capacity to change. So just remember that when you see somebody that's in their own struggle. And then the cow, the pig, chicken. I talk about accomplices and allies all the time. I don't need any allies. Allies choose when they want to get involved. They could walk away anytime. I need an accomplice. If I'm looking at 20 years, damn it, you better be sitting right there with me looking at 20 years. Otherwise, I don't need you. Because at any time, you could walk away. If you're not willing to put your neck out there with me, what you gonna do? How you gonna help me? How can I believe in you? So, I'm sandwiched in between Desmond and Dr. Leslie, so that's all I got. I'm gonna give her back to Mike, because Dr. Leslie McBean Claiborne is gonna close this show. Thank you for coming out and supporting me. And we turn the mic over to the big sis,